I'm Glen Ballard here with my partner Alan Silvestri, and we wrote the songs for Back to the Future, the musical. What we discovered is that this incredible story, Back to the Future, works brilliantly on stage because we get to journey to the 80s and to the 50s, and they're distinctive decades musically, culturally, and every way. They're kind of separate. And once we discovered that this great story could actually work that way, 80s, 50s, plus Alan's incredible score, it felt like, oh gosh, this was a musical hiding in this movie this whole time. And because the movie is so perfectly paced, plotted, it's fully realized. And so we just had to take that incredible design and use it as a musical.
I think through Glenn's experience, he's become a song historian, if you will. And I remember when we launched off on this, him shaking me and going, it's like, Doc, do you know what this means? That we're going to get to go to the 80s and we're going to get to go to the 50s. There are moments where you're not in the 80s or the 50s. And that's been a really fun musical aspect to play with. And the writing is so tight and wonderful that I always felt you could do Back to the Future with 5 or 6 actors on stools with microphones and little spotlights and a narrator, and you'd get the sense of this movie in a big way, like a radio show. So I think that helped us with the musical, that we didn't have to cut to shots of the Serengeti and have flamingos flying and all that. It's really image wise contained, and that just was an amazing help to us in terms of how it staged ultimately.
But ultimately, Alan's score from the original movie is actually the grandest, biggest thing in the whole movie. And it kind of elevates a smaller piece into sort of grandeur. And the music has always been at the front and center for the way we wanted to approach this musical. I know for me as a songwriter, Alan's score has informed every song that we've written. The way he wrote the score, the intervals, we're always referencing that because it's kind of like the deep vein for this whole thing, and it's sort of the heartbeat of the whole show. So we're just so lucky that his score it is a huge part of this theatrical. It really is incredible.
For so long before I even had a chance to meet him, I had admired his work and heard his work, and it was part of the culture. And we had worked together for a good while before Back to the Future. We had done Polar Express, we had done Christmas Carol, a number of things. So for us to have this wide open palette, if you will, and there I am with someone I consider to be one of the most brilliant songwriters and storytellers and record producers. We kind of just like looked at each other and went, let's start. And as Glenn said, we knew we had the score. We knew we had these great songs that were already in the show: Johnny Be Good, Earth Angel, Huey's fantastic hit records, Power of Love, and Back in Time. So we knew those are on the table, the score's there, but then there was a lot to do. And I can't imagine anyone greater to go through all that than Mr. Ballard here. You don't need money, don't take fame, don't need no credit card to ride this train. It's strong and it's sudden and it's cruel sometimes, but it might just save your life. That's the power of love.
Well, Alan is one of the great storytellers just with music. All of his scores are narratively driven. He's telling the story alongside the director every single beat. So taking that sensibility into this, it made it easy because he's also an incredible lyricist. And we just got in and rolled up our sleeves and started writing songs essentially for the characters initially, as the story developed, the dramaturgy developed with stage, we sort of did a deep dive for each character and to try to understand how to animate them on stage and give them their close-up on stage, which would be their song. So it's just been storytelling for
Hmm.
both of us. He's a storyteller. That's what I do. And having this rich opportunity to let the characters speak their true emotions and really give you their motivation, it was a great gift for us.
I remember one of our very early meetings, and those always occurred at Bob Zemeckis's office in California, and it was the four of us sitting around a table: Bob Gale, Glenn, Bob Z, and Alan. And I remember uh, Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale kind of speaking to each other in front of us. And the drift of that conversation, as I recall it, was we already have this story, we already have this movie. So, what's really going to be different is this music part of this. And that was very exciting. And of course, there was a little bit of pressure that comes with that because the movie is so iconic and so beautifully done. But I think both of the guys were very kind of embracing of, you're going to have to figure all that out, guys. So why don't you go off and do that? And that's what we did. We
That's what
went
we
off
did.
and started with the opening number.
Exactly. I mean, the first number is based on entirely on Alan's score, and it was like, okay, we need to start the show with that, but with some more information from the characters singing. We meet the ensemble, we meet Goldie Wilson. So, but it's still based on the score. So it really is a great way to get us started. Like, okay, this is Back to the Future, by the way, but it's just a slightly deeper dive into characters. The story still holds up so beautifully. So, of course, we had Bob Gale
Mhm.
constantly ask questions about for characters, like, would the character does where is this character coming from? What is Doc Brown's deep emotional state? And we always had Bob
Mhm.
Gale to help us through
Yeah.
what is the backstory, because we're kind of telling the backstory for a lot of these characters, like what motivates them. So we never really had to go very far. We always had Bob Gale and Bob Zemeckis to say yes, no,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
kind of much easier for us to negotiate because we knew we were dealing with iconic characters and an incredible movie. So we didn't want to make any mistakes. I learn from Alan Silvestri every single day I'm with him. He's one of the great musical geniuses, one of the great storytellers, eminently articulate. So every time we would try to do something, I'm like learning from him. Really, I truly am. And so it's been a. I feel like every song we write, we've learned something.
Yeah, and it's the exact same for me. Glenn and I have kind of come at the world of music from slightly different angles, but inevitably that conversation at that table that happened over and over and over again, we always knew there was someone in this room who actually had done this before. And so at some point we're talking about, well, this will maybe be staged like this. And everybody's talking, and all of a sudden you slowly see their heads turn towards Mr. Ballard, and they go, it can happen, right, Glenn? And it was great because the three of us, the two Bobs and Alan, had not done this at all before. And Glenn had been through the whole life cycle of musical theater, from development to workshops to on stage cast albums, the whole thing, opening nights, the whole thing. And it was just amazing to feel that we had a family member who had actually gone there before and could always say, we're going to be good.